Hello, yes, that's right. It's Joe here for JOYRIDER TV, live from the Wild Wind workshop down on the beach. And somewhere out of nowhere, some absolutely banging champagne conditions on right now. I can't believe it, but it is actually happening at the moment. Really good conditions, but no boats, no one to go sailing with. So I think the live Q&A is probably the most appropriate thing at this time. Yeah, so if this is your first visit to the live Q&A, what I'm going to be doing is answering your questions that you have about catamaran sailing and anything else. This is being recorded live, so a lot of the questions will be coming in live, but then this video will be posted later on for you to see. So if you are watching this later on, I won't obviously be able to respond to your questions live, but I will respond later on in the comments or the following week, next week, in next week's live video, if that makes any sense at all. All right, we've got Finn Timelapse on board, who has now got a Hobie 16. Congratulations, Finn. That is a great choice. I hope you've been having some good action on that bad boy already. That is, I'd say, that is quite a life-changing event, getting hold of your first Hobie 16. Very nice. All right. And Finn follows on. He says, maybe I will be in Vasiliki Bay in June, July. Great stuff. We look forward to seeing you here for some of this champagne, which someone's accidentally popped the cork on a bottle when there's nobody here to drink it, but just keeping it on tap. We've also got Kush on board. Just ordered the cool looking Karumba hoodie. Oh yes, if you didn't know, as well as making videos, I also run a small online clothing emporium called totaljoyrider.com. This is actually a custom t-shirt that has come out of totaljoyrider.com. If you want anything custom, just let me know and I can put it together. There we go. Finn says he's had the 16 for a couple of weeks, but he hasn't been able to get out sailing yet because of stupid lockdown. There's Nick in Bulgaria. Nice to have you on board, Nick. And George. Hello, George. Glad you could make it. All right. So as always, I've got some preloaded questions to kick off with. So I'm going to kick off with a preloaded question. Here we go. So this one's from Artie. And he says, in fact, I think his question is a bit out of context, so I'm going to put it into some context. He's asking about mainsheet and traveler and which of the two you should be using at which times. So let's start off in pretty basic terms. The control that you're going to use the most often on a catamaran is going to be the mainsheet. The mainsheet is going to have the biggest effect to what is going on your boat. And then the traveler, you're using, it's kind of a bit like changing gears. So you'd alter the traveler either for wind strength or for point of sail. So if we have a big picture, it's one of the biggest of our boat. There's the back beam. So traveler positions, let's get in. So if we're sailing upwind and we're not overpowered, this is generally speaking, we're going to pull the traveler in all the way to the middle. So the middle is going to be kind of like our starting point. So upwind sailing and we're not trying to lose power, traveler stays in the middle. If we then turn the boat onto, we're talking very generally here, if we then turn the boat onto a beam reach, so with the wind coming side onto the boat, the true wind. So where have I got room? All right. So this is for upwind. Is that big enough to see? Yeah, I think so. Then the beam reach. And then we're going to talk about the broad reach as well, which is what is also known as going downwind. With the wind coming, whoa, bit of a misfire there. All right, so with the wind coming straight down. So upwind, we're going to have the traveller in the middle. If we then go on a beam reach, we're going to, roughly speaking, put the traveller just under halfway out. Huh, this picture's actually backwards because the wind would be coming from like this side. We're on the wrong tack. Is that okay? No, it's not. All right. Gotcha. All right. Beam reach halfway. And then a broad reach for going downwind. We're going to put the traveller pretty much all the way out. This is very generally speaking. And then once the traveller is in those positions, we're then going to be playing the main sheet from that position. So the traveller is for our angle of attack, and then our main sheet is for the actual shape of the sail. So to get the shape of the sail right, we're going to look at the telltales which are in the sail. This is in light winds or when we're not trying to lose power. And what we're trying to do with the telltales, if we can use the boat as our window in the sail where we can see the telltales, if the wind's coming from here. So we've got a telltale on that side and then a telltale on the other side of the sail. And what we're trying to do is get both of those telltales flying straight back at all times. If the telltale that we can see through the sail, so on the leeward side of the sail, if that's not flying straight back, then we're going to let the main sheet out a little bit. And then if the telltale on the windward side of the sail, the side that we're facing, if that one's not flying straight back, then we're going to pull the main sheet in a little bit until it flies straight back. So it is quite a delicate balance. And what you will notice is in your sail, where can we draw next? Just check and see what is on the screen and what's not. All right, here. All right, if we've got our sail, you'll have telltales at the top, possibly the middle, possibly the bottom. So the telltales at the top, when you're loosening the main sheet, it's the top of the sail which is going to open up the most first, because the main sheet is having the least direct effect on that part of the sail, because the main sheet is of course down at the bottom. So when you pull the main sheet in, the bottom of the sail is going to come much tighter in than the top because of how close it is to the main sheet. Is this making sense? Makes sense to me. Which means the top of the sail is naturally going to be a little bit more open. So in realistic terms, what you're probably going to be looking at is, if we draw in the telltales, the windward telltale, the one on the side of the sail we're facing, all of them on the outside should be flying straight back at all times. But on the windward side, the bottom one should be really flying straight back. And then the next one may be lifting just a little bit. And then the one at the top lifting a little bit more, because the sail is getting gradually more open as we go up the height of the sail. On certain boats, on the high aspect sailboats like the F-18s, the A-class, the Tornado, you'll have streamers or telltales coming off the leech of the sail as well. And the reason we use those is because they are a bit easier to see, And basically, if they're telling us if the sail is in too tight, so how will we know that the sail is in too tight? Well, basically, if most likely one to disappear first, that's right, it's the bottom one because it's closest to the main sheet. So if the bottom one disappears, it means the sail is just in a little bit too tight. If the other two are still there, and maybe you need to just ease the sail out slightly and then she'll come back. So there we go. There's a little bit about the telltales as well. But there's traveller positions, upwind in the middle, beam reach halfway, broad reach all the way out. And then we're playing the main sheet from those positions to keep the boat under control. Now, the other way that we can use the traveller and the main sheet is for wind strength. So let's say we're sailing upwind again, but we're constantly having to let the main sheet out because otherwise the hull is going to fly too much and we're going to capsize. So instead of having to ease loads of main sheet, instead we're going to let the traveller out until we can sail with the main sheet quite tight again. And that means we're going to have a much more of a control over the shape of the sail. If you've got the main sheet really, really loose, it means that we haven't really got much control over the shape of the mainsail, especially as the wind's getting stronger and you're trying to lose power. So by letting the traveller out, so we're letting the whole sail out generally, and then we can control the shape of the sail using the main sheet again. So we're still trying to sail with a tight main sheet. And then, sorry, if you've got the traveller in the right position, you should be able to sail just with an armful of main sheet to control the power. So there we go. All right. So I think that's, oh, the other part of the question from Artie was when you're tacking and you get to that point where you head to wind and you want to let the mainsail out, do you ease the main sheet or the traveller? The answer is the main sheet. Keep the traveller in the same position. So if we've been sailing with the traveller central, when you go for your tack, just do all your main sheet trimming on the main sheet, all your mainsail trimming on the main sheet. So sheet in a bit as you enter the tack. As soon as you head to wind, let the main sheet off, and that will release the leech, the back edge of the sail, and that will allow the boat to come away from the wind much quicker and easier and better on the new side. So there we go. All right, we've got some other reports coming in. All right, George is actually in Mexico. Yeah, nice. We haven't had many people, especially in the live chat, from Mexico. So it really is great to have you on board there, George. We've also got Casper, who says, would it be something to make a video on how to overcome the surf and how to come into the beach with serious surf? Yeah, I think that would be a very useful video to make. My problem with that, for the actual practicalities of making a video on that topic, is we don't often here in Vasiliki Bay get any waves, because whenever the wind is strong, it's generally blowing from the side, which means the sea stays completely flat. But there are the occasional days when we do get some onshore wind. I know in places like Holland and Belgium, if there is surf and you're coming in, a lot of the time, because you've got these fantastic sandy beaches, you'll just run the boat straight up the beach, especially with something like a Hobie 16. But with a boat which is a bit more fragile, like say you're sailing an A class, what you're probably going to want to do is out at sea, if it's possible, drop the mainsail, come in just on the mast, and then get off the boat before you hit the beach, and then hopefully there'll be somebody there to help you with a trolley. But yes, I agree, it would be a great topic for a video, and I will add it to the list, and then I'll just have to wait for the right day when we've got waves coming in. It does happen sometimes to have a look at how we're going to go about doing that. We've also got Juan on board. Hello, Juan. Nice to have you with us. Nick says, last week you mentioned that dumping the spinnaker sheet when the bows dig in is a good way to snap the mast. What are the mechanics on that one? Oh, no, I think you got the wrong end of the stick there, Nick. Dumping, if the bows go in, dumping the spinnaker sheet is fine, but dumping the main sheet is not fine. All right, we'll clear the board and just have a quick look at this one. Yeah, so if you're sailing with the spinnaker and you get a gust, and you, especially a bigger gust, and you need to bear away quite quickly to take the power off the boat, then easing an arm's length of spinnaker as you turn downwind is extremely desirable. That's actually going to help to take a bit of the load off the bows, and you're going to be much less likely to stick the nose in as you bear away. Whereas the main sheet, if we just look, there is our mainsail, main sheet, spinnaker, boat. Okay, so what the main sheet is doing, when we're sailing with the spinnaker, unless the wind is quite light, so definitely if it's been windy enough to double trapeze upwind or even single trapeze upwind, on the downwind, when you're putting the spinnaker up, it is necessary to bring the main sheet in really tight, because what bringing the main sheet in is doing is it's pulling down the leech of the sail, and what that's doing is pulling the mast backwards, especially at the top. So the mast is kind of, well, not kind of, it's actually like anchored here by the hounds. So the bit underneath here is well supported, but the bit above the hounds is what we call where the rigging attaches. All of that bit of the mast isn't actually supported by anything. So when we are sailing with the spinnaker up in a stronger wind, it is necessary / essential to pull the main sheet in tight, because then by pulling the mast backwards, it means that the mast is supported. And if you're sailing along and you stick the nose in, then what's going to happen in the rig when you stick the nose in? Answer: the pressure is going to increase massively. So if we're sailing downwind, let's say very generally, non-scientifically, if you're sailing downwind and the wind speed is 15 knots and your boat speed is 15 knots, then that means that you've got 0 knots of pressure coming from behind trying to stick the nose of the boat in or snap the mast. Whereas if you're sailing in 15 knots of wind and you're doing 5 knots boat speed, then you're going to have 10 knots of pressure trying to put the bows in. So that is why it's essential to sail fast. And I can't remember what my point was there, but yeah. So if we're sailing, let's say if we're sailing in 15 knots at 15 knots, and we stick the bows in, then suddenly the whole boat is going to load up with pressure, all of that pressure, because we're not going fast anymore. We'll probably slow down to like 5 knots, loads of pressure. And then if at that point we release the main sheet, all of that extra pressure is going to be taken by the top of the mast, which is going to bend forwards like a witch. And if it's unsupported, we could break the mast. There we go. Look after your mast out there. But having said that, if the wind is light and you haven't been double trapezing or trapezing at all on the upwind, then don't feel that you have to crank the main sheet in. Well, rather than saying if you haven't been double trapezing, let's say if the wind wasn't strong enough to double trapeze upwind, then you don't want to be cranking the main sheet in super tight, because that's going to be oversheeting the mainsail and actually slowing you down. So there we go. I see that as soon as I said the words main sheet, Nick got it. So that was a bit more of an explanation than what was needed. But there is an explanation on one of the reasons why we crank the main sheet in tight when we're going downwind on a boat with a spinnaker. And that's any boat at all, any catamaran at all with a spinnaker. So you could be on your Hobie FX1, could be on a Tornado, could be on a Topaz 14. Anything that's got a spinnaker, you need to look after your mast. All right. So Finn Timelapse says, oh my God, I just saw your channel has got 5.7 million views. Wow, that's a lot. Well, I did actually just look earlier, and I've actually made 858 videos now. That's a lot. So in fact, news just in, this is exciting. I've earlier on today, I did go through the whole back catalogue of videos, and I have re-indexed all of the videos, because on YouTube it can be a little bit perhaps maybe quite difficult to find exactly what it is you're looking for. So I've made a PDF, which is the list of all the different topics that are covered, and I've grouped them all so that you should be able to navigate through this sea of videos much easier. So that will be in the, I did put a post on the community tab earlier on. There you go. All right, Finn Timelapse says, see you, Joe. It's 2 a.m. here. Yeah, I think Finn's in I think he's in Adelaide, Southern Australia. So night, Finn. Okay. All right, HJ's on board. He says hi. Hi, HJ. All right, so next preloaded question, I think. All right. So this next one is from Errol, who says, I think Errol was sailing a Tornado or similar, and he'd just like to know what my way is of keeping the spinnaker sheets tidy, and what I'm doing there. So I think I'm going to start off by just drawing a boat like this, just for a little bit of kind of trampoline layout. So we're talking tidy sheets. The first thing with tidy sheets, whether it's your spinnaker sheets, your jib sheets, or your main sheet, is let's make sure that they're not too long. So there are, of course, different ways that when you're buying new rope to use as any of the sheets on the boat, it's always a good idea to buy the rope maybe a meter, maybe 2 meters longer than you think you need it, just in case. Just in case perhaps you measured it wrong, maybe you start sailing with a really tall crew, something like that. Because, of course, you can always make the rope shorter, but going the other way, unless you're into some splicing and tapering different ropes together, it is a little bit more of a challenge making your rope longer. So start off with your rope lengths longer, and then with the spinnaker sheets, what I actually do is I'll be using firstly which type of rope. I'm using 8mm Mattioli Swift cord. 8mm. Oh yeah. Now there's a few benefits to this Mattioli Swift cord. One is that it's quite lightweight. 2 is it's quite soft in the hands. 3 is it doesn't absorb the water, so it doesn't get heavy. And it's just really nice rope. And perhaps number 4 is it's a Dyneema rope, so it's got no stretch to it. It's extremely strong, And because there's no polyester in the rope, it means it doesn't generate heat like polyester rope does. And the reason that generating heat is not something that we want is because when you're pulling the spinnaker back in to the chute, if your sheet is going in with the spinnaker and the spinnaker is underneath the sheet, then as it's going in, you can actually generate, so this is more so with the halyard, but the sheet to some degree, as you're pulling it in, you can generate so much heat that you could put a bit of a burn mark on the sail. This is actually true. So that's number one. Get the sheets the right length. And I think this is really, I'm just guessing here, I've got it written down, of course. I think it was like 14 or 15 meters for the spinnaker sheets on the Tornado. And then we're taking the sheet firstly to the larger of the blocks here. And when I was shopping for bits for the boat before the Worlds, I came across these. I think they were, the brand is Allen, and these were 60 millimeter pressure ratchet blocks. And the reason I went with the Allen ones is they were much, much cheaper than the Harkens. Harken, if you're not familiar with Harken, Harken is definitely the industry standard in blocks for the sort of boats that we're talking about. And it is, I think you can't really deny that Harken is making the best blocks for our sailing. But that's not to say there's not other good blocks out there. It's just Harken. It's really durable, really consistent. It's excellent. But of course, because of that, it's very expensive. Whereas I got these blocks from Allen, which is spelt like this, 60 mil. And I went a bit bigger because the bigger blocks on the spinnaker just help to take, what do they do? I think they give a bit more of mechanical advantage, which means the crew doesn't have to pull the rope as hard. And the Tornado's got a fairly big, juicy old spinnaker on it. And if you're doing a, let's say, a 20-minute downwind leg in quite strong winds, that could be a pretty serious workout for the crew, especially if he's Swedish and he moans a lot. He doesn't moan that much, but he is Swedish. So bigger blocks, more mechanical advantage. 60 mil is as big as you would want to go. And we're using pressure ratchets. I'm using pressure ratchets on both here. So the way that the sheet will go, if this is the corner of bad picture, if this is the corner of the sail, the sheet will go into this block. This block is saying what our sheeting angle is. So it's very important we get this first block it goes to in the right position. And that means forwards and backwards, it wants to be in the right position. Too far forwards means we're going to be putting too much tension in the leech of the sail. Too far backwards, it means the leech of the sail is going to be too open. So what we're looking for is kind of the same as what we're looking for with the jib, in that let's just draw, where can we draw a spinnaker here? If this is a spinnaker, this is the tack. It's quite a bad picture, really. So what we're looking for is an even amount of tension in the leech and in the foot, generally speaking. So we'll move this block forwards and backwards to get that really in the sweet spot. And this will have quite a lot to do with your mast rake on your boat, because as you bring the mast further back, it's going to open up the leech of the sail more. So you will need to move where this block is positioned. So from there, we've then got a second block just tied off somehow to the front beam. and then the rope is going to go round there. And I'm using on the Tornado, I'm using a pressure ratchet on both of those, but on the F18, just using a pressure ratchet on the first one and just a block without a ratchet on for the second one, because on the F18 the sheet load isn't as high, so it's not necessary to have a pressure ratchet on both. But perhaps if you were sailing with somebody who's very perhaps a youth or somebody who's not so strong, then having two pressure ratchets on there is a good idea. Now, the reason we're using these pressure ratchets, which I'm talking about, if you're not familiar with these sort of blocks, then what a pressure ratchet does is the ratchet, the bit that stops it from going out, that engages when it's under tension, when it's under load. And the reason that's good, rather than just having one that's on all of the time, firstly, if it's light winds, you don't have to worry about switching the ratchet off. It'll automatically go off when it goes below a certain amount of pressure. But more importantly is if you're jibing or dropping the spinnaker, when you go to take it down, there's not going to be anything that is going to resist the sheet. So that's going to go out easily. Whereas if you had a permanent ratchet on there, there'd be resistance there stopping that from going out, making the drop worse or the jibe worse. And you could end up damaging your spinnaker, especially on the drop, if it's not going out, because you'll have to pull the retrieval harder to get it to go down. It's true. All right. So from there, that will then go into the hands of the crew. And then from there, it will go to this block, then that block, round the front, and all the way onto the spinnaker on the other side. So the sheet does need to be reasonably long. And this is why how tall your crew is could affect the length of your spinnaker sheet. So that is one way of doing it. And that is the way that we've settled on with the Tornado, which works very nicely. The other way, which this was recommended to us to do on the C2, and we ended up doing it on the Tigers as well, is we run a piece of elastic under the trampoline, and then from here, this end of the spinnaker sheet, is this right? Is it right? No, that's wrong. Yeah, this piece of the spinnaker sheet ties on to the elastic there, and this piece ties on to the elastic here, so it's not continuous. And what this means is that when you're not using the spinnaker, the sheets are pulled really tidy, and you know exactly where they're going to be every time, and that works very nicely as well. So there's two options there. Very nice. But that is basically how we're keeping our spinnaker system tidy. And then where the spinnaker sheets are tying on to the clue of the spinnaker, what we want to make sure here is that we haven't got a big lump of rope there. Because again, like with the jibing and dropping, if we've got a big lump there, when we're jibing or dropping, that lump is going to get caught on the bridle wires, on the forestay, and everywhere else. So that is why we're either splicing a piece of rope into the middle of the spinnaker sheets, or using a thin piece of Dyneema on there, and that ties on to the spinnaker sheet or splices on to the spinnaker sheet, meaning there's no lump. We're looking for no lump. There we go. All right. So there we go. Just checking in. We've just got Ralph tuning in. Ralph on Macleay Island, Queensland, Australia. Great to have you with us, especially at this time of night. Thanks for tuning in. All right, next. In fact, at this stage in the game, I am going to take a commercial break. Thank you very much. And we're back. All right, next preloaded question. And this one is coming from Gustavo, who says, please talk about the grip padding on the stern of the pontoons. I would like to add some, but I'm unsure of what to use and what to look for, how to install it. Okay, yeah, so it is a very, let's we'll get rid of this bit of confusion here and we'll start a new piece. If this is our hull, we're looking from the top. If we talk Hobie 16, hope that's okay. There's a pylon there, back of the hull, perhaps a bit more like that. Okay, now of course we're going to have the sidebar here, which is already going to have grip on it. But I think a lot of the Hobie 16s, when they're new, they come without any grip on this back part of the hull. And especially if you're looking at doing some JOYRIDER TV style, sending it downwind on the trapeze, you definitely want to have grip. And I would put grip from just level with the pylon on that part of the gunnel, so kind of folding around that outside edge of the boat a bit on the top. And there's 3 products that I've got lined up. Just going to get the first one, all right, because we're in the workshop and we can, if I can find it. Oh yeah. Okay, and I'm back here. All right, so this is the this is what Hobiecat Europe call neoprene anti-skid. And can we see this? We've got texture in there, and this is what's supplied by Hobiecat Europe. It comes in these lengths, and for doing the back of the hull, one of these lengths, you could actually cut it in half and then stick half onto it. It'd be mega grip. But it is it's reasonably expensive, like with anything that comes from Hobiecat. But by it being reasonably expensive, you know you're getting something fairly decent. So that is product number 1. But this is this side, this is the other side. It comes without any adhesive on there, so you have to stick it on yourself. And the stuff to use is called contact adhesive, and this contact adhesive is good. It's like rubber glue, and the reason we're using that is because it's flexible, so it bends with the rubber. And the way that you use that glue is you apply it thinly but evenly to both surfaces. So on the hull, I would measure the space where you're going to put it and actually use masking tape to make sure you're only putting the glue where you want to stick the rubber, and then apply the glue maybe with a paintbrush or something, just a thin layer, or a plastic card or anything, spatula, and then you want to wait for about 10 minutes until the glue is dry enough that when you poke it with your finger, it no longer feels sticky. And then once it's got to that stage, you take the 2 pieces, you take the boat and the rubber, and you stick them together, applying lots of pressure. And then ideally you want to leave it for a day before you're then using the boat. And there you are, you've got this nice bit of grip on the back of the boat. But there are other options. And option that I found here is, in fact, I'm going to put this into the live chat, copy and paste, is we've got, oh, made a mess there. All right, can we do that? All right, there's two. In fact, that didn't come out very well. Remove. Okay, I'll try that again. So the first one is, if you're in Europe, there's a website / product called Treadmaster. And Treadmaster are making this rubber stuff with the diamond kind of grip on it. And it comes with adhesive, really high quality 3M adhesive already on there. So you just peel the backing off. Of course, make sure everything's clean first. Peel the backing off, stick it on. Lovely, you're done. And a fairly similar product, if you're stateside, is over at Murray's. This is kind of like what Office Hands Dave is calling rail rug. And this is, we used some of this stuff to do some of the sidebars on one of our 16s. And I have to say, this is the best stuff I've ever come across in all of my days. So well worth a look there. And yes, it is fairly expensive, but yes, you get what you pay for. There you go. So that is what I'd say on sticking rubber on the back of your boat. Yes, it is a great idea. Yes, do it. It makes the boat so much more comfortable to sail. At this stage, I'd like to say hello to Toot in Texas. And we've got Willis on board as well. He said, I'd love to see a video on getting out and back in about 2 to 3 foot surf too. It's unavoidable in my area, especially if it picks up while you're out. Yeah, I'd actually love to make that video. So maybe I am going to have to go on a field trip. I've been talking about going to Belgium for a couple of years, but I think in Belgium they will have the right conditions to make that video. If someone will let me borrow a boat, then there we are. All right, next preloaded question. And this one comes from Camilla, who says, what smock or spray top would you recommend for Hobie sailing? Plan to do some sailing in Lisbon, it's in Portugal, this Christmas. And we want to use the spray top on top of the wetsuit. Yeah, the spray top that I use is more like a smock. The only way that I can define what the difference is between a spray top and a smock is, I'd say a smock is one that has like a roll neck kind of thing without an opening, and that is going to give you more warmth. There's a load of really good smocks out there that you can get from Crew Saver, from Magic Marine, from Gull, from Gill. I bet Helly Hansen have got an expensive one as well, as will Henry Lloyd, of course. But the smock is going to give you a bit more warmth. The one that I've got has got like a fleece lining on the inside as well, so that is really nice. Whereas a spray top generally will be less expensive, and that's more likely to have like the neck part, which seals with a bit of Velcro, and then it will have a small gap gusset this part, which is also closed with a bit of Velcro. These, I would say, are not gonna. They're gonna do a good job in keeping you a bit warmer. They're gonna keep you a bit warmer. But the smock is going to be warmer still, because what you're wanting to do, if it's going to be windy and cold, you want to keep that wind chill down, and a spray top is really going to help you there. But what I would do is get on Google, Black Friday coming up, and see what sort of deals you can find. Getting the size right is important as well. And then comes the question, do you put it over the top of everything, or do you put it underneath your buoyancy aid and trapeze harness? I am definitely in the put it underneath everything camp, because what I want to have the ability to do is firstly to access the pocket of my buoyancy aid, but I also want to have the ability to take my buoyancy aid and, if necessary, the trapeze harness off more quickly. Whereas if you've got a spray top over the top of everything, it is going to mean that there's one more thing that you've got to take off before, like, say in a non-threatening situation, like perhaps you're rigging your boat up, you're in the water and you've dropped a shackle. If you've got your buoyancy aid on, it's going to be very difficult to dive to the bottom to get your shackle back. Whereas if you take your buoyancy aid off, a bit easier. There are, of course, some pretty bad situations that could be helped by taking your buoyancy aid off as well. There is a video coming soon on that topic. But there we go. I think that is about the size of it where it comes to the spray top / smock choice. And on the same sort of topic, I'd just like to thank everybody who's been getting involved in the what safety precautions do you take before you go out sailing. If you haven't seen it, I just put out a short video a couple of days ago because I'm planning to put out another video on the topic of safety, and I thought I'd open this up to the JOYRIDER TV global community to get everybody's input on the topic so that we could do it as a combined effort. So if you haven't seen it, have a look in the videos, and it's from earlier on this week. Have a look at the video there. I'll tell you exactly what I'm looking for, and then you can just stick something in the comments, and then that is going to help when I'm making the video on the topic of safety. Thank you very much. All right. So Zach is on board. He said, I've said it before, as have others. Come to the States. Yeah. Very keen. And it is, yeah, I'm sure a lot of you know what it's like, but if you were young and single with a bit of cash, it's the sort of thing would be very easy to do. But not being young or single, it makes it a lot more difficult when there is a family involved as well. Tooch says, come Lake Buchanan in Texas, protected water with good wind, minimal waves. Yeah, Texas is definitely on the itinerary when I do come across. I think there needs to be at least 4 different trips to the USA that I'm going to do to make sure I hit all of the key areas, because what I'm told is it is a jolly big place, and to try to come once and hit everywhere is silly. All right. Last preloaded question. This one comes from Greeny. Who says, I'll read it actually. He's looking at, I'm assuming it's a he, looking at sorry if it's not, I'm looking at purchasing a Hobie 14. When looking at older versus newer boats, new is going to be a better option, but everything costs. Older boats less performing and has the hull shape changed over the years, or are they the same? A new boat stronger or lighter? There we go. So biggest question, has the shape of the boat changed at all with the Hobie 14? The only thing that has changed slightly is the shape of the mainsail, and I don't know when that change was. I think it must have been about 10, maybe 15 years ago. The earlier Hobie 14s, it will be the same mast. That's a pretty poor representation, but the earlier Hobie 14s have got more sail area at the bottom, so it's more low aspect sail, whereas the newer Hobie 14s are a bit more high aspect, and the high aspect just is better for racing, because it's going to point higher and be more efficient sailing upwind. That is where the high aspect sail is really going to give you the advantage. But that is the only change in the shape of the boat. The fittings in places will have changed over the years, but they will be exactly the same boat. The consideration when looking at the age of the boat that you're going to buy, whether it's secondhand or new, is if you buy a secondhand boat, as the boat gets cheaper, the shopping list of things you're going to have to buy to make the boat seaworthy to start with is going to get bigger. So starting off straight away, if the boat is more than 5 years old, you're going to have to buy new, unless it's been changed. I would strongly recommend buying new rigging for the boat straight away to make sure that the mast is not going to fall down because of broken rigging. And then the list continues as the boat gets older. Next thing to replace would be ropes, then the trampoline, then the sail. And then after that, maybe the rudder blades, tiller extension, things like that. But there's not many parts on a Hobie 14. So getting a slightly older boat is, it's perfectly viable as well. And then the question of weight, yes, an older boat is likely to be a bit more heavy because over the years, it is going to take a little bit of water in, and perhaps the older boats, the manufacturing process wasn't quite as weight sensitive. There perhaps was a bit more just slap it in involved, whereas now it's very scientific how the boats are made, of course. But all in all, depends if you're racing or just going out for fun. If you're just going out for fun, an older boat is certainly going to do you well. Whereas if you're racing, and you want to get good results, I'd be looking for a boat less than 10 years old if you want to have a good chance on the race course. I think that's about it. Yeah, there we go. All right, so just one more from Toot here. He says Mustang Island has a spot that is completely protected for a 5-mile beam reach with screaming fast wind. Oh my word, this sounds fantastic. Yeah, it's definitely on the itinerary there, Toot. I'll keep you posted and everyone else when it's time for me to come across the Atlantic. But anyway, I think that's about the size of it. Yes, I hope Greeny, that answers your questions on the 14. With the older boat, also look for any soft bits on the hull, because if the hull's gone soft, one reason it might have gone soft is because of a general dampness inside, which becomes humidity inside the hull, which is going to make it go soft. So just keep an eye out for that. So I'll be back next week with some more Q&A on Friday. Have got a juicy video in the pipeline on, what is it on? It's on if you haven't sailed before, or if you sailed a very small amount, or if you're a dinghy sailor wanting to get into catamaran sailing, what are the considerations? So it's like a video for brand new JOYRIDER TV subscribers. That's what we're looking at. It's true. Yeah, do check out the new index of indexed videos. Check out the community tab to find that. And otherwise, Show Us Your Cat is back this Sunday with another absolute humdinger of an episode. And like Willis says, don't forget to hit the like button. So if you could hit that now before you go. And otherwise, thank you very much for tuning in. And I'll see you soon with some more on JOYRIDER TV. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It's a real pleasure. Thank you. Toot is always learning something new. I think we all are, myself included. Paul Z, War Z. See you, mate, from Queensland, Australia. All right. See you, Paul. All right. And off we go.